eyes get worse and worse. I am going to share my screen and we are going to get going. So, good evening, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to our road to the midterms, which is going to be going through the rural South. And we are counting down to 2022 and then on our way to 2024. I'm Andrea Miller. I'm the founding board member of Center for Common Ground. Center for Common Ground is a Virginia-based 501c3, and Virginia is really in the house tonight. We run 4 campaigns: Reclaim Our Vote, which so many of you have been a part of, writing postcards, all 9.4 million of them, making phone calls, 1.7 million, and sending text messages, 2.9 million. We also have our newest campaign, which is really just beginning. This campaign is on the ground with in-state partners, and a lot of these folks are here tonight, and I'm going to be talking to my good friend, Reverend Leo Woodberry of Florence, South Carolina, which is where we have one of our democracy centers. We also are home to the Vote Equality Campaign, and the Vote Equality Campaign owns and manages the RVG, the Ruthless Vote Getter, which was out touring Roanoke, Virginia this weekend. We are also the home of Students for Justice, and they will be reconvening, I believe, in the fall. I don't think we're doing a summer program this year. And then we also, in addition to all of our electoral work, we do civics education, and we work on both federal and state legislation. Now, our agenda for tonight, we've got a little election in Virginia, and I'm going to give you an update on where we are with that. I'm also going to spend just a few minutes talking about a very special project in Louisiana that we're going to do. Justin is here. We'll do a little update on federal and state legislation. I'll do federal, and Justin, if you want to do a really quick state, if Josie doesn't join us, we'll cover it that way. And then we'll spend the rest of the evening talking with Reverend Leo Woodberry. All right, Virginia. Texting is coming soon. I know, so is Christmas 2025, but we are not running or controlling the texting program. It is being launched by our partners at Virginia Civic Engagement Table. So while we tend to operate with incredible speed, they do not. So we will be texting. We don't know when, but they keep telling us soon. So meanwhile, the Virginia phone banks are up today. You will be able to make calls this weekend. I'll let Gabe give an update on that. We've got Richmond and Chesterfield in Central Virginia. We have Virginia Beach in Hampton Roads. We have Alexandria in Northern Virginia. And then tonight I will do Roanoke. So the jurisdictions that I mentioned give us 200,000 calls to make. Early voting started, and I don't know if you can see, no, you can't, my I voted sticker. I voted today, and Rick and I were voters number 228 and voters 229 in our little rural community. So if you wish to text for us, whenever that ends up happening, you can sign up for texting at spoke.live/CCG, Center for Common Ground. And thanks to Yoni and Movement Labs, major shout out to them, we have our own Spoke server. Why are we not texting Virginia on our Spoke server? Because State Voices actually has all the Virginia data. So we will text Virginia using the State Voices server. Now, in 2021, because we are currently doing some civic education work, the issues that we will be working with, many we've already done some work with, are voting rights. That's who we are. That's in our DNA. That's what we do. Gerrymandering, which is an integral part of voting rights. We've added a new one. I had a meeting with an incredible group out of California that is working to abolish involuntary servitude. So I will be talking with all the faith partners about this new initiative, which is an incredible addition to the racial justice work that they do. The 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution abolished slavery and involuntary servitude. However, there was an except clause, and the except says, unless you are in prison as punishment for a crime. In the 21st century, looking at greedy corporations who are seizing on prison labor as the opportunity to say, oh, our goods are made in America, but to be able to get incredibly cheap, if not free labor, we must end this practice that is really fueling for-profit prisons and mass incarceration. So this is the new 21st century slavery, involuntary servitude because you are in prison. Corporations don't want to pay fair wages to American workers. They have been put on major blast for bringing undocumented immigrants in to do this work. And now, in their mind, they have hit upon the perfect solution: free or nearly free prison labor. We are also working on criminal justice. For those of you who joined our Accelerating Justice webinars, we will very soon have the legislation from North Carolina, which has been introduced. We are waiting for our partners to give us guidance on what legislation they want us to work with first. And then we've already done quite a bit of climate justice work, especially in the area of rural electric cooperatives for Juan Smith, and We the Plug, though, for Cobb ENC, and then Students for Justice worked with Benita Wells on Coast Electric in Mississippi. So we are very involved with these issues in 2021 because, let's face it, when we look at voting rights and gerrymandering and criminal justice, every one of those issues is really tied directly to racial justice. Now, our federal legislative priorities and what the heck is going on in Washington, D.C. The For the People Act, H.R. 1, passed the U.S. House and is now in the Senate. According to Senator Schumer, they will probably vote on it by August. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, otherwise known as H.R. 4, we expect it will be introduced on May 8th, even if it isn't. There are John Lewis votercades. There's about 135 of them going on throughout the entire country. So there will be a huge nationwide welcoming the Voting Rights Act back into existence. So we're working on willing it back. And then because it's a congressional bill, the reparations bill S40, HR 40, we currently are waiting for movement on those bills. So that's our federal legislation. We are waiting for the abolish involuntary servitude to be reintroduced on the federal level. That hasn't happened yet. So in North Carolina, these bills are now out. Our omnibus racial justice bill, our citizen review board bill, and our community policing bill. So I'll have numbers on these by next week, and we are hoping that on May 13th, Senator Muhammad will be able to join us and walk us through his legislation. If you do not already have a copy of our annual report, thanks to Justin, it is currently online. So it is, you can go really to our main website, Center for Common Ground. And I always forget where it is, but it's in a pretty obvious place. And you can get it, you can view it right there. And now it gives me great pleasure. I am delighted to introduce my very dear friend, Reverend Leo Woodberry, who is joining us from Florence, South Carolina. Reverend Woodberry is a New Yorker who is now basically a Southerner. You can get a little more Southern than South Carolina, but not much. And he has been involved in environmental work since the 1990s. He's worked in the areas of water, air, renewable energy, Southern Organizing Committee, the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, South Carolina Wildlife Federation. He is currently board chair for Southeast Climate Network, otherwise known as SEN. He is one of the partners of the South Carolina Environmental Justice Network, and he is also one of the authors, one of the main authors of the Southern Green New Deal. And I'm going to show everybody a picture. I got this wonderful article. I think Loretta sent it to me, Water from Heaven. And that is going to be one of our topics when we talk about what it is that you are working on in South Carolina. So, Reverend Woodberry, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you, thank you. And what I'm going to do is, well, there we go. There we are. Unmute. And you can tell me and everybody, hi, there you are. Welcome, Reverend Woodberry.
Good evening. Hi, Andrea. Hello to everyone. I just realized that my battery is. I need to plug a battery up or something to my phone. Just got back from Charlotte, where we had a rally and a press conference about the Mountain Valley Pipeline and the what I call criminal cabal that's been put together by PSNC in North Carolina and Dominion Energy. And the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission gave them permission, those companies permission to start building the pipeline again, despite, some opposition to it, both in the court, etc. So the good news is that a couple of hours after we had our small rally and our press conference, North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality has denied the permit for the Mountain Valley Pipeline in North Carolina. So yay to that. So we know that they may they may appeal it and that sort of stuff, but a win is a win, a victory is a victory, and we're very happy about that. So some folks ask, why are we in North Carolina and other places? And I tell them, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And particularly for North Carolina, we have some of the same players, Dominion Energy, Duke Energy, etc., in both Carolinas. And we found out
Virginia, Dominion Energy is ours.
Right. And we found out that, if we don't talk to each other and work together, they'll tell people, they'll make concessions in one state and in another state tell you impossible. And so we, over the years, we've learned to work closely together. But thank you all for this opportunity. And I'll talk about some of the work that, we are been doing. And then I want to talk about the amazing Democracy Center that we have set up, because you can do all the work you want, but we need that policy piece, the legislation, to make sure that things are not just passing, but that they become permanent. They become permanent and longstanding in our communities. So as Andrea said, we've been working on environmental justice and climate issues for, I don't even want to add it up. I know it's over 30 years now. And over course of time, we've given 6 classes training people to be solar installers. Some of the folks actually have gotten jobs in the solar industry. We worked with PD Electric Co-op and helping them to plan putting some of their community solar farms in place. We have with Duke Energy on Highway 9 in Dillon County. We worked with Duke Energy in putting together a community solar farm that Andrea mentioned, Loretta Slater, which is named after her daughter, who they live between 2 polluting facilities. Her daughter contracted cancer at age 19 and she lost at 21. That particular farm provides solar energy for 1,200 homes. And we also negotiated with them. We said, look, it doesn't matter if a home is energy inefficient, if you're heating and cooling the outdoors and spending a disproportionate amount of your income on energy costs. To that struggling family, it doesn't matter if their energy is coming from fossil fuels or solar. So we were able to get Duke to do 1,500 free energy efficiency upgrades. And that was wonderful negotiation. So still working in the area of solar. We've been able to work with different communities. So we've done the training in Mississippi, in Georgia, in South Carolina, in Virginia, just a few of the places. And we did train the trainers, and ask them to go back and train at least 10 people in their community, which they all have done. Our current project, one of our current projects now, is we just installed as a demonstration project that will be ending in May, 4 solar power hydro panels. Amazing technology that literally draws in air, heats it up with the thermal unit so that the water condenses, stores it, pumps it to a dispenser, and we have clean drinking water that comes from heaven. We're not tied into a grid. We don't have to go through a water treatment center or anything. These panels can be dismantled or moved so that if we have a climate emergency, as in Texas or Jackson, Mississippi, we don't have to wait on the kindness of strangers, which we need, for them to pay money and truck water into a community. Those panels can be assembled in a day and a half, and by day 3, they're producing water, clean water. And we just got a test back from South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. We've been monitoring it since March 8th, and we just got a report back from them that said nothing wrong with the water, right? So right now we're working on putting more water panels in Marion County in the Britons Neck community, which has flooded 3 times in the last 5 years, in Manning, the city of Manning. And we're also talking with people in Virginia and in Mississippi. So, and the really great thing is if we can get some of those Biden resources,
Yes.
the 40% of sustainable investment in his executive order on environmental justice that every agency and department is supposed to send to communities, we can create water bottling companies that will create businesses and jobs for people. So we don't have to worry about hacked water systems, people messing up the water like in Flint or Newark or somewhere else. So we're really excited about that. And the Britons Neck community, which is a rural community with about 2,000 people, about 80% African American, we are getting ready to put up some greenhouses with grow bags. They have a garden, because we want to create some engines of economic development. And we're in the process of buying 7.5 acres of land to put a training center there, some outdoor recreation and some other things, so that people do not have to cut down their trees to pay property taxes, etc., and just making the flooding worse. We want to mitigate the flooding. So other things we're doing, I'll give you an update later. Deepak, our good friend Deepak, just sent us a mobile and stationary hotspot where we can go into communities that have little or no internet service. And for 40 people, they'll be able to get on the internet, either going to a stationary location, or this is a good segue into the Democracy Center, or we can actually text people using the text messaging service to say, hey, come meet us at XY Church, come meet us at the community center. We want to sign you guys up so you can get your COVID vaccine, or you can register to vote, or things like that. So we're really, really excited about doing that. That's going to be part of our work with the Democracy Center. Our Democracy Center is headed up by Anthony Hall, who is one of the people that work with us at New Alpha Community Development Corporation and with our church, Kingdom Living Temple. And right now, what we're doing is putting together a booklet that is kind of a Civics 101, and also lists all of the elected officials and when their terms are up. And one of the things we found when we were working on Teresa Myers Irvin campaign, who was elected and is the first African American, the first woman to become mayor of the city of Florence. While we were out getting out the vote, we found that a lot of people don't know who their representatives are. They don't know when to vote. We had people who told us, we thought she already won. We were like, no, that was the primary. You got to vote again, right? And so we're putting that in place. We're going to be working on putting together some more videos, like the videos that we had, doing some yard signs, hopefully some billboards, and doing training on a regular basis. And we have two candidates, one who will be running for Marion County Council, and another one who will be running for Florence County Council, who both want to work with Common Ground so that we can train them and know how to, how to actually conduct a campaign. Last thing, well, two last things, almost finished, Andrea. Okay, two last things. We've been doing briefings. We've been doing briefings in Washington, D.C. So we've done one with the White House, CEQ. We've done two with EPA. We have one coming up in May with Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the head of the CDC. And we also have some coming up with USDA, the Department of Labor, the Department of Energy. And these are all to point out with them, using the platform of Southern Communities for a Green New Deal. What do we need in terms of dealing with climate impacts and infrastructure? Last thing, okay. Today we had a conversation with our Republican congressman's economic development person, and we are setting up a meeting with them because $1.7 million was just allocated to Marion County, and we want to see how that money can go to the three communities that are flooded the most. And B, we want to watch our elected officials, including from Congress, state legislatures, counties, council people. We want to see who votes for the people and who votes against the people, so that we can remember that when we're encouraging people to get out and vote. And we'll also be using the wonderful legislative tractor to keep up with that Andrea and others are making available. So usually don't talk this much, but so many amazing things going on, and we're excited about sharing it with you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, and Reverend Leo, you missed the work you're doing with the Clinton Global Initiative, and I'm going to
Yes,
be a
I'm
part of
sorry.
that work.
Yes, so Paul, thank you for that. And we're so pleased that you will be a part of our webinar in May. So May 15th, New Alpha Community Development Corporation, the Whitney M. Slater Foundation, working with the Clinton Global Initiative, we are doing 8 webinars, one a month. The first one we did in April dealt with COVID-19. Dealing with COVID-19 as a response, getting the vaccines out, getting food to people, all those things we've been doing, wonderful and so very necessary. But even more important is the recovery, to make sure that Black, Brown, and Indigenous people are not the first ones who contract the disease or the next disease that comes along in the next pandemic. So April was about COVID-19. The ones that come after that, starting in May, deals with respiratory issues, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, all of the things that make folks in our communities more susceptible to COVID and more likely to die from it. And so we're launching that next month from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Our very own Andrea Miller will be with us as our moderator. So we want to invite everyone to come. And if you want the information, all you have to do is email us at New Alpha CDC.
Well, Reverend Woodberry, you'll get the information to me, and then we will distribute it out through our network. We're not going to make everybody send you emails. We'll do it the other way.
Wonderful, because I won't answer half of them on time anyway. So busy. But anyway, thank you for this. Thank you for the support from Center for Common Ground and all of our other partners, because we only do what we do because we have amazing partners like you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Reverend Leo. One of the things that we've realized as we work with our democracy centers is we know the mission of Center for Common Ground is to empower underrepresented voters to fully participate in democracy. Well, our democracy centers, their mission is to convert infrequent voters to voting rights advocates through deep community engagement. So when people are realizing we're getting our internet from you, then you become a trusted partner. When people realize they're the folks that are helping us get clean water, you become a trusted partner. When you say, as we're able to get back together, we're going to be having an event at the church and we're going to be talking about da 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 da, people are going, oh, those are the people who are doing all these really great things in the community. Of course, we're going to go to that. And one of the things that I loved that you talked to me about early on was the community survey, helping the community identify what their needs really were, find that pain point, and then helping them understand, all right, now, if we don't have this, it's because of the funky people sitting on that county council. These county supervisors are so not doing the right thing. And then people go, they're not. All right, wait a minute. Where was that little pamphlet? When are these people running for re-election again? And then the community just goes out and they start pounding on their neighbors' doors. Did you realize we got to get rid of them? You're like, what? But when it comes from the community as opposed to outside, it's real. And I want everybody on this Zoom to also understand one of the things we do not do with our democracy centers is we do not tell them what is important for their communities. They identify the needs and tell us. We never thought we'd be going into the internet business, but that was what this community needed. And we know other communities are going to have similar needs. I don't know that Reverend Woodberry was planning on going into the water business, but that's what his community needs. So he's going into the water business. And in the next few months, we'll be bringing on speakers talking about cooperative economic models where we will have a means of wealth building among Black communities that is non-extractive. For instance, when we look at things like broadband, if we were to go out and come up with a way to bring Comcast in, that's extractive to a community. Comcast takes all the money. They're not in the community. They're not of the community. Yeah, the community gets internet, but they don't get anything else.
Mhm.
If we build out the internet infrastructure using a totally different economic model where it is the community that owns the internet, not an outside extractive economic force, then
Mhm.
we are building wealth, we are building expertise, we are building jobs right there in that community. And that community, when the next federal election comes around, they see that things are beginning to change. I will
Mhm.
never forget what we heard in Alabama in 2017. And I knew we were not going to be able to win Alabama in
Mhm.
2020. The voters told us. I voted for a Republican and there was sewage in my backyard. I
Mhm.
voted for a Democrat, and there is still sewage in my backyard. The next time I vote, it will be for the person who gets the sewage out of my backyard.
Mhm.
So that is what democracy centers do. We find the pain point of the community. We hear it. We bring it inside, and then we figure out the steps that we can take to begin to fix it. And we bring the community along with us. And that is what democracy centers are. Reverend Woodberry, would you be willing to answer some questions if any of our folks have questions? These are our most loyal, hardest working, and then a lot of future democracy centered leaders are here as well. I mean, Virginia is really in the house. We've got about 9 people from Virginia that are here. So if we have questions, raise your hand and then we'll call on you or put it in the chat. Hey,
Mhm.
Christiane. Yeah, our RVG team, 2 of the team is here. Christiane is here and Lorna is here. And Reverend Woodbury, you met them down in South Carolina.
Oh yes. Mhm. Yes, the
Yeah.
ruthless vote getter. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And you sent me a marvelous picture. It was the picture that I wanted, where we had the big billboard and then we had the RVG underneath it. And I always say in my mind, the billboard is like waving at the RVG as she goes down the road. That's my baby, because they've got the same image on it. And there's the little one rolling. That's my baby. That's my baby.
Yes, that was absolutely awesome, and I tell you, people noticed it, and they noticed the wording. And when we replicated the wording in the Get Out the Vote commercial that we put on BET, and we were very strategic about it. So made sure assisted living, sisters, the popular Tyler Perry shows that the commercial aired then. For the young people, we were able to get it to air during the hip hop awards, and so. But the messaging that they saw on the billboards, they saw repeated in the commercials, and that was really awesome. It tied it all together for folks. Yes,
Yes, yes, yes. And we did really love that message. Vote your power.
absolutely.
Yep,
Mhm.
yep,
So
yeah.
can I bring up something a little food for thought for us? Because
Oh,
as
we
you,
love food for
oh, we got a
thought.
question.
Jerry had a question. Please be aware that ALEC, the right-wing group, is pushing legislation that blocks local entities from developing their own internet. More than a few states have passed that. Maybe Andrea or Reverend Leo knows about that.
I don't have any information about that, but that is really interesting and really important. That's something we need to stop. That's probably a backlash, because if you heard President Biden's speech last night, that was one of the things that he lifted up, and we know that one of the first lines of opposition that exists is in our state legislature. So we need to make sure that that doesn't pass, and if it does pass, that we replace the people that do it. The internet service, and I mean, if you have internet service, what it costs is absolutely ridiculous. If you look at your city, your town where you live, and think, how much money is every resident paying? How much money is every business paying? How much money is every industrial business, every municipal, government? And it's there. Actually, it cannot cost that much to provide internet services. So I would say the response to that is we need to try to organize and let people know that this is not the way of the future.
Well, I know that the rural broadband will be going through the FDA. It was in 2019, there was 600 million federal dollars. 200 million of it was grants that didn't need to be paid back. 200 million was loans, and the last 200 million was sort of a combination of grant loan. It's my understanding that there is going to be $2 billion in the budget set aside for rural broadband. And that will be coming down from the feds. So because with broadband, we're where we were in the 1930s with electricity, it would have made sense for the telcos or the rural electric cooperatives or even the electric utility companies to offer broadband, because they own the wiring from the poles to the front doors.
Mhm.
So they didn't do it. They didn't want to do rural. And now there's a lot of money on the table. So they're fighting to make sure they get control of that money and not small, independent, local community groups doing their own thing. They want that extractive economy, and they're going, oh my God, we're going to miss out. This is going to be an interesting fight.
Mhm.
And again, it will be a fight, because I have a friend on ag, and her specialty and her heart, rural broadband.
Thank you.
Yes.
Andrea, there's a
So,
question from Kioma Adaku. Do you see that?
I saw that, Kiama. No, I don't really see right now. I have no budget to do fellowships. That is not what I do. But there are other partners that I work with where that is exactly what they do. They train people in the cooperative economic model. Let me rephrase that. That is not exactly what I do now. Doesn't mean that I couldn't do it. I'm just not funded for it and not doing it now. But yes, I agree. People need to learn that there is an alternative to vulture capitalism. There's a wonderful saying a woman in my church said about capitalism. She said, people shouldn't talk about trying to fix capitalism because it's not broken. It's working just fine.
Mhm,
It wasn't meant to work for us.
mhm,
And we have to keep that in mind. When people design a system, are we in it or are we under it? And if we're under it, we need to get away from that system.
mhm. Absolutely.
And there's also a question from Roxanne, Andrea, if you see that.
Yeah, small black farms have been decimated over the years, and even more so during the pandemic. Is there an opportunity with solar or other clean energy solutions that small farmers should consider? And then I'm going to add on some other things to that. So, Reverend Leo, do you want to take part of it? And then I've got another piece of that.
Sure. Well, starting off, back in 1929, Black people in the Southeast owned 60 million acres of land. Today, it's down to 3 million acres of land. And as we visited farmers in Southeast and Southwest Georgia and some other places, they were already really having a hard time with climate impact. So in Georgia, we visited some farmers who lost their crops because of Hurricane Michael, lost their processing sheds where they had contracts with restaurants, but restaurants don't want to buy collard greens that aren't cut up and processed and bagged. And they also, were very interested, the ones who had wells, and trying to set up irrigation systems that were solar powered, as well as solar powered processing centers so they can lower their costs. One of the things that the pandemic showed us, well, let me say two things it showed us is this. One, that the industrialized farming, the corporate farming system, that food supply chain is very fragile and not very reliable under pressure. So we really need to look at how we can develop local economies, how we can create food sovereignty for communities. How do we do that? By partnering with Black farmers who are struggling. And we also found out during the pandemic that the whole false narrative about food deserts and food swamps are just that, a false narrative that basically says you can't have access to fresh produce unless some corporation decides to build a supermarket in your neighborhood. But during the pandemic, all over this country, people gave away fresh produce from parking lots, from churches, from community centers. They loaded them on the back of trucks and in cars and distributed them to their neighbors. So we need to build relationships with Black farmers. We need to, I don't care if we have to set up these little booths that you pass in the South along the side of the road in communities and create jobs, create businesses, support Black farmers, and do away with that entire false narrative that our people have to suffer with high blood pressure and with diabetes because most of the food they have access to is heavily laden with sugar and salt. And so I think we have a tremendous opportunity as we come out of the pandemic to create a true new normal and not reset to the same crazy stuff we had before that had people disproportionately sick and disproportionately dying at an earlier age than they should be.
Thank you for that. That is great. And again, when we look at literally any city, about an hour and a half, 90 minutes out of that city, you are probably going to be getting into Black farmers' land. And so many of our democracy centers, they really are going to be looking at how do we reach out to people that are literally right outside our cities? What does it look like? What kind of building do we need? And again, like you said, are we doing a farmer's market where we set up tables in a church parking lot? Or do we have a community where we've got empty space that isn't being used for anything anymore? Could we get that space? So there's going to be a lot of new thinking going on in terms of what would be the best way to get what we need. We've gone through a way, but let's examine what is the best way and how can we go and do that. So we might be inventing something else, who knows? All right, let's see. Okay, I'm asked, okay, right, yes. And yes, biomass is not clean, safe, renewable energy. It is no, no, no. We're both Green New Deal people, and as Green New Deal people, one of our goals is, of course, a full and complete moratorium on fossil fuels, because it is very, very critical that we very carefully examine what we use for energy, and we make sure that whatever we are choosing for our energy of the future is clean, is safe, and is renewable. So that means we are not burning anything. We can't do that. We had 20 years, 5 years ago. Well, that clock didn't stop ticking because we stopped working. So now we've got to make up for lost time and clean up our planet and our energy and our emissions faster.
I want to say, Andrea, that, um, biomass, which has no market in the United States whatsoever, all of their markets are in Asia and in Europe. And while the United Nations is saying that we need to plant 1 trillion trees worldwide, they need to be trees that support the ecosystem, that doesn't disrupt the biodiversity, and loblolly hybrid and genetically modified pine trees and pine plantations are not the answer. We are under assault in the South. As fossil fuels ramp down, coal and oil, we're seeing an expansion of pipelines with frack gas, because there's nothing natural about how they poison people's water in Pennsylvania and other places. And we're also seeing a huge expansion of biomass wood pellet plants. Both of them emit greenhouse gases, which is not helping us reduce greenhouse gases to address the climate change issue. And they are both being built in environmental justice communities, people of color and low wealth communities. That's where they're going through, just like the fossil fuel industry did. And if you talk with them, they will admit themselves that these are transitory energy generating systems. So we should really say we oppose all dirty, extractive energy generation systems, and we support all clean, renewable energy systems. And if we can do that, then rather than fighting our fights separately, we become more intersectional. So it's not about fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline or Line 3 pipeline or the Atlantic Coast Pipeline or fighting offshore oil drilling or biomass. No, we need to unite under one umbrella where we say any dirty extractive energy industry needs to not be expanded and all clean renewable energy industries need to be expanded.
Reverend Leo, I always throw in clean, safe, renewable.
Clean,
I
safe,
always
yeah.
use all three words so that people don't suddenly ask me about nuclear, because
Right.
everybody knows nuclear is not safe. So once you put safe in there, people won't be walking up and going, oh, well, what about nuclear? No.
Mhm. Fukushima,
Yes, among other things. Yes.
Chernobyl.
Yes, yes, we should have had enough nuclear accidents.
Mhm.
Okay, can anybody believe that it is 9 o'clock? I mean,
Wow.
I feel like we've only been talking for like 5 minutes. The time has just flown. I'm going to need to do my carbon pricing, why carbon pricing cannot ever be a thing webinar at some point. I think I'll just do it as its own separate thing. Virginia has a Green New Deal, and the Virginia Green New Deal is really looking at writing some very, very substantial legislation where not only do we address climate, but we address jobs, we address work, we address pay, we address health disparities, we address governance, and we also have our sustainable cities and transportation, because all of our lives are one big whole, and there are a lot of really serious choices we're going to need to make if we expect to have a functional planet past 2040. So see, you went and got me on my climate soapbox. Normally I'm good and I don't get up there. All right, all right.
Steph has had their hand up for a while.
Who? Oh, Steph. Go ahead, Steph. Virginia.
All right, guys, I try to be patient. I just left it up there, and eventually I was like, they're closing out. I need to wave. But Reverend William, it's awesome work you're doing where you're at with the solar and then water company as well in a natural sense. But I got a quick question for you. I did hear earlier when you were talking about what you've been doing, you were able to get something accomplished under Duke Energy. We've been having trouble with Dominion Power here in Virginia. Yeah, all throughout the state, even here in Hampton Roads. So I'm wondering, how did you get them to listen to you and work with you? Because that is a conundrum we are under.
It took 2 years of meeting with them every month, and every month hearing them say, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do it. And, to be honest, it was our persistence. It was the support that we had in the community. But most of all, what happened in North Carolina with the coal ash ponds and them having to pay people, they needed to do some polishing of their image. And I think when we started really pressing them on that, they were like, okay, we need to do something. So it was a combination of things, but it didn't happen overnight. It took 2 years of us literally meeting with them at least 2 hours every single month. And every time they would say no, we would come back again and say, but you can do it this way instead of that way, or they're doing it in another place, in another state, and just the persistence, we just would not take no for an answer.
So you're meeting with the company and not just the delegates of your state.
Now, with the company, and a matter of fact, at one point, we weren't getting any answers from the community reps and that. And so what we did was we just went to the headquarters in Charlotte.
And they
And
just let you in.
well, that every now and then you have to flex your muscle too. And I'll give you a quick example. They want to build a wood pellet plant in Florence, 13 miles outside of our city. When they put in for a permit to expand the plant in Greenwood, South Carolina, we had about 30 cars that came out and drove around DHEC about 10 times, honking horns, shouting slogans out of bullhorns. And then we went to the governor's mansion and did the same thing. So someone at DHEC told me, at the Department of Health and Environmental Control, they said, when we saw the application to build a biomass wood pellet plant outside of the city of Florence, they said, we called you guys up before we even did a public notice. So sometimes we've had some things with Duke where, you have to really let them know we can talk or we can go to battle in the street. So which one would you rather do? So it's a combination.
Talk or we can march on you.
That's it. Which one would you rather do? And realizing that marching is not a solution. Marching is only to drive them to the negotiating table where you can get some wins.
All right. Well, again, I am going to say thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you so very much, our very, very dear family. Next week, I'm going to have Juan Smith and Kim, if you're here, tell Julius, I'm going to be calling Julius. Hawkinsville will be in the house next week. And so our future Richmond Democracy Center leaders were here. Problem. Reverend Gary Callis and Frank Mosley, and then Christiane and Lorna will be working with them. Our future Roanoke Democracy leaders here, Reverend David Denham, my pastor, and we also have people here from Harrisonburg, from Petersburg, from Virginia Beach, because we know we need to get something over in Hampton Roads. So again, the communities that don't vote because they said voting hasn't worked for us, it hasn't made a difference. Our democracy centers help people figure out how they can make a difference. And then we begin making those differences. And people who never thought much of voting suddenly now think so much of voting when they're saying, if we got to take that person out of the seat, and we're looking for somebody else to put in, how come it couldn't be me? And right. That is what we want. Now, that is an empowered community. And with that, I'm going to say good night.